Hello guys, so today I'm going to go through the mini quiz from 415. It was all about applications of derivative rules. So let's try this. We did this once before, so I wanted you guys to get a little bit more practice with this. So we've got P of x equals f of g of x. So that right there is the chain rule. So for the chain rule, to find the derivative of p prime of x, it's going to equal derivative of the outside, f prime, keep the inside the same. Then we multiply by the derivative of the inside, g prime of x. All right, so then we fill in 1 for all of the x's. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to just erase, just for the sake of space, all the x's. And now I'm going to put 1s there. All right, so p prime of 1 is going to equal f prime of g of 1. So let's start out with tackling that composite function. So g of 1 is equal to -3 times g prime of 1, which is 6. All right, and so then we have to do f prime of -3. So f prime of -3 equals 5. So that's going to equal 5 times 6. So p prime of 1 equals 30. All right. So I'm going to erase these little circles here so that for the next problem, those aren't there. Okay, on to the next one. We've got f of x divided by g of x. So k of x equals f of x divided by g of x. That is the quotient rule. So my quotient rule, u and v. So u in this case is f of x. V is g of x. So u prime and v prime. That's going to equal f prime of x and g prime of x. I'll make that prime symbol a little bit more emphatic. So we've got g prime. There we go. So my quotient rule rather is u prime v, f prime of x times g of x minus uv prime, f of x, g prime of x, all over v squared. So that is g of x squared. Okay, so we're going to be filling in -3 and for all of the x's. So I'm going to take this equation right here and just fill in a -3 everywhere where I had an x. So don't mind me while I erase all the x's and fill in a -3. Okay, so f prime of -3. F prime of -3 is 5 times g of -3. G of -3. So we've got f prime of -3, g of -3, which is -2. So times -2 minus f of -3, which is 1, times g prime of -3, which is -1. All over g of -3, -2 squared. All right, so that is -10 plus 1. That's going to be -9 over -2 squared, 4. So k prime of -3 equals -9/4. All right, now for the next one, we've got, I'm just changing up colors here. Let's go purple. Okay, so we've got t of x equals f of x times g of x. So that is a product rule. So product rule, my u is f of x, my v is g. Oh, hey, I already have that right up here set up. So this time 2.0, we're going to be doing t of x is equal to, oops, sorry, t prime, because we're doing the derivative, equals u prime v, f prime of x, g of x, plus, since it's product rule this time, uv prime, f of x, g prime of x. All right, so now that we have that, I'm going to fill in 1 everywhere where I see an x. So just in the sake of space on this, I'm going to erase all these x's here, and I'm going to put a 1 there. Okay, so 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, because it's the x value of 1. So t prime of 1 is going to equal f prime of 1. Let me get rid of all these circles from the previous problem and squares and arrows pointing at them. Hold on. There we go. Nice and neat. Okay, f prime of 1. F prime of 1 is -4 times g of 1, which is -3, plus f of 1, 2, times g prime of 1, 6. So we've got 12 plus 12. T prime of 1 equals 24. All right, next one. We've got r of x equals 2f of x plus 3g of x. All right, so r prime of x is going to equal, well, this is much more straightforward because out in front is a constant, a coefficient, so it's just going to be 2 times the derivative of f of x, which is f prime of x, plus 3 times the derivative of g of x, which is g prime of x. Okay? So now we want to know it at -3, so we're going to now fill in all the x's with -3. So we've got 2 times, and then once again, let me get rid of all of my boxes and circles that I did from the previous problem. All right, so we've got f prime of -3. F prime of -3 is 5, plus 3 times g prime of -3, which is -1. So we've got 10 plus a -3, r prime of -3 equals +7. Okay. All right, last one. All right, so we've got n of x equals g of x to the third. So it's a function inside of a function. Last one is a chain rule. So to find n prime of x is going to equal, take the 3, bump it down, keep the inside the same. Then we subtract 1 from the exponent. Then we multiply by the derivative of the inside. All right, so now we're finding n of -3. So once again, I'm going to erase all of those x's and just drop in a -3. All right. Okay, so scrolling on up, I'm going to erase the previous problem circles. So we've got n, help if I highlighted my pen again, n prime of -3 equals 3 times g of -3. G of -3 is -2 squared times g prime of -3, that's -1. All right, so we've got -2 squared is 4, 3 times 4 times -1. Final answer, n prime of -3 equals -12. All right, so that right there is my final answer. Let's do that. Those right there are my final answers for the problem.